We are back. You are chatting with John P. Today, we are going to be talking about 5 things that I think some, if not most of you, will find quite shocking about the watch industry that really you'll only realize if you become a watch dealer or you get your hands a little bit dirty on the forums or you've just been around a while. So we're going to talk about that, but first I'd like to urge you to like and subscribe. Once again, it really does help me. We come here, we talk about watches, we leave in the comments below, and even when you reach out to me on Instagram, The Real John P, I do my best to get back to most of your questions and comments. So please help me out and like and subscribe. I do appreciate it. And actually, at delraywatch.com, we've gotten in just so many things. I personally cannot even keep track of it. Federico here, he oversees a lot of the hands-on touching of the watches and the people that help him do that. So I pop my head in on that side of the office every so often, and the things we get in, we get in some really nice things, guys. Check it out, delraywatch.com. So let's talk about it. The first item is that new watches from authorized dealers, they have margin in them, sometimes up to 40%. So some might consider this huge considering the price point. Some might consider this not so huge compared to other industries where the margins might be higher. By the way, this is new watch sales. I'll say the margins in pre-owned are a lot smaller. But if you walk into an authorized dealer, there's a good chance that if they're having a bad month and you play your cards right, you can get sometimes up to a 40% discount. Now, it does depend on what the brand is. Don't walk into a Rolex AD and say, hey, give me a Batman or a Batgirl and I want a discount. They'll push you out the door as fast as possible because they'll feel insulted. But if you're talking about like a Bell & Ross or like a Bremont or sometimes even Omega, and you go to an authorized dealer and not a boutique, you can get yourself a discount anywhere, just depending on how they're feeling that day, between 20 up to 40%. So keep that in mind. There's margins when you're talking brand new watches, and try to find a authorized dealer that is having a bad month. Next, and this is something that you really only realize if you've been burnt out there in the market or you're just a dealer like myself. So the next item is there's a lot of Franken watches and counterfeits. And today we're starting to see some very, very good counterfeit watches. They're not only are the counterfeit manufacturers replicating the actual cases and the designs and things like that and using similar, if not almost one-to-one materials, they're starting to actually replicate what the movements look like. Now, there's some telltale signs in professional watchmakers, which we have, and the people that we have here, when we deal with pre-owned watches, we can spot these differences. But if you're quickly buying on a forum or out on the field or in Craigslist or something, you have to be careful, because some of these counterfeits we're seeing, I am blown away. Unless you have a good one that you know is good and you compare it, or you have that watchmaker, guys, they're making super replicas with movements that are so good. They're tricking some more novice dealers out there, and we're hearing about it. It's crazy, guys. So be careful with the counterfeits and the Frankens, because they are running rampant. Now, this one you'll only know if you're a dealer. There's a bit of a pecking order. So the next item is there's a bit of a pecking order in the way that the watch dealer industry works. And it seems like this is also the case with diamonds. And it's generally based off of how long you've been in the industry, but also the types of things you do in the industry. So with delraywatch.com, we've been doing this for just a couple years, but we do it in such a way that I think we garner a bit of respect. And there's some people in the industry that don't necessarily put the quality behind the craft and actually, engage with collectors. They kind of just push things on people, and it kind of helps to create and perpetuate this bit of a pecking order based on reputation. So when we're talking about from a dealer's perspective, there's people in the industry where people know up, that's one of those, and there's others where people say, oh, like they do a good job. So that covers that. There's more that we can get into, but at a high level perspective, there's a pecking order in dealers, and if you bought enough watches, you can probably get a feel for it, whether or not you recognize that exists. The next item that I think could be very shocking to many of you is that the industry is still very old school. Now, this is from a lot of pre-owned dealers through authorized dealers all the way back to the brands themselves. There's some brands where they're not even using, advanced computer systems to keep track of inventory. You hear crazy stories and you talk with other dealers where, they're writing down their inventory on paper. And even from popular brands that I can't mention, there's popular brands that are barely cataloging their inventory, and it blows my mind coming from the tech world where everything needs to be computerized because that's efficiency, that's creating the machine of business. And there's just a lot of people in this industry that have been doing it a certain way, and it's kind of like it's difficult to move that ship in another direction if it's already going in a great direction. So it's very surprising, but very old school. Lots of old school personalities and mentalities, but it's starting to change very slowly, and I'd like to think that we're doing our part, at least in the pre-owned market with Delray Watch, pushing the industry in that kind of digital era where we talk about watches on the internet, we have fun doing it, and we're transparent. So we're working on it, but the industry still has a long way to go. And lastly, now I think this one, it's really a shame, and sometimes you can fall into this trap, and I think it's really important to tell people about this, is that there are some sellers, sometimes dealers or quasi-dealers, that will sell watches that they do not have. They'll use stock photos, or they'll take photos from someone else, they'll put it on Chrono24, they'll put it elsewhere on the internet, and they'll hope that someone will say, oh, that's an amazing price, I'll buy this, and then they'll sell you something different, or they'll try to find the watch. Now, apparently this was very common practice years ago in the earlier days of the internet, and I think that when we talk about the pecking order of dealers, it can oftentimes look that people that do that in the industry are kind of frowned down upon, but certainly as a consumer, you could get yourself into a trap where if you start seeing a lot of stock photos and there's no original photos, you should maybe think about that. And also, if the price is too good to be true and it is a brand new watch and it's stock photos and they're not an authorized dealer, that's a huge warning sign, and you could get yourself into a bit of a trap. Now, there's protections against these things, and I'm not saying that anybody particularly is doing anything dubious or trying to be hurtful, but it could just be a hassle dealing with, and that's something that you need to be aware of. And I'll tell you, there was someone that called in, and they were looking for a particular watch, brand new, a specific Tudor, and they saw this price, and the price was amazing. And I looked at it, and right away I knew stock photos, generic business name, the location was not inside the continental United States, so that's another warning sign when we're talking about that scenario. And right away, you're doing this for a while, you can tell when they don't have the watch, and they hope to get it on the back end and make couple $100 when the deal's all said and done. So avoid that if you like your watches timely, or take the gamble if you'd like to. The choice is yours at the end of the day with your hard-earned cash. So guys, hopefully some of these were very shocking to you. For those veterans out there in the watch world, you probably knew a few of these, but some of these, always good refresher course. I'd say the counterfeit watches, we as a collected community, we really need to do our best together to band up against this. And I could say at Delray Watch, we're certainly taking every action we can to make sure that these things are kept off the streets. So anyway, guys, this has been an episode of some 5 shocking things about the watch industry, and hopefully you found it interesting. Anyway, like, subscribe, all that stuff. I have got to get back to work. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.